Help us reach 1,000 subscribers on our new channel Lesbian Stories. We hope you enjoy the story. The lights of Jacksonville's premier fashion event dazzled around me as I stood backstage, my heart pounding with a mix of excitement and nerves. I'm Zoe, a 29-year-old model on the cusp of my big break, and tonight's show could change everything. As I adjusted my outfit one last time, I caught a glimpse of someone entering the chaos of the backstage area. She moved with purpose, her brunette hair bouncing slightly with each confident step. Our eyes met for just a moment, but it was enough to make my breath catch in my throat. There was something magnetic about her gaze, a depth that seemed to see right through me. I quickly looked away, focusing on the task at hand, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just occurred. The show went off without a hitch, adrenaline coursing through my veins as I strutted down the runway. As I made my final walk, I scanned the crowd and spotted her again, the brunette from earlier. She was scribbling furiously in a notebook, her green eyes intense with concentration. A fashion editor, I realized, and my stomach did a little flip. After the show, as I was changing out of my last outfit, a stagehand approached me. "The editor from Style Savvy wants to interview you," he said, gesturing towards the exit. My heart skipped a beat as I saw her standing there, waiting patiently. "Hi, I'm Caroline," she said, extending her hand. Her voice was warm and inviting, with a hint of a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "I'd love to ask you a few questions about tonight's show, if you're up for it." I nodded, perhaps a bit too eagerly, and we found a quiet corner to talk. What started as a formal interview quickly evolved into something more. Caroline's questions were insightful, drawing out thoughts and feelings I didn't even know I had about my career and the fashion industry. But it was the moments between the questions that truly captivated me. The way her eyes crinkled when she laughed, the subtle flick of her hair when she was thinking. Before I knew it, an hour had passed, and the backstage area was nearly empty. "I think I've got more than enough for my article," Caroline said, closing her notebook. "But I'd love to continue our conversation. Would you like to grab a drink?" I agreed without hesitation, and soon we found ourselves at a cozy bar not far from the venue. The dim lighting and soft jazz created an intimate atmosphere, and as we sipped our cocktails, our conversation deepened. Caroline told me about her journey in the fashion industry, the challenges she'd faced as a woman in a competitive field. I shared my own struggles and dreams, feeling a sense of ease I'd never experienced with someone I'd just met. As the night wore on, our bodies seemed to gravitate closer. Our knees brushed under the table, sending little jolts of electricity through me. When Caroline reached out to touch my arm to emphasize a point, her fingers lingered just a moment longer than necessary. The air between us felt charged, full of unspoken possibilities. Last call came far too soon, and we reluctantly made our way outside. The Jacksonville night was warm and humid, wrapping around us like a blanket. We stood there for a moment, neither wanting to say goodbye. "I had a wonderful time tonight, Zoe," Caroline said softly, her green eyes searching mine. "I'd really like to see you again." "I'd like that too," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. We exchanged numbers, our fingers brushing as we handed each other our phones. As we parted ways, I couldn't help but look back, catching Caroline doing the same. We shared one last smile before disappearing into the night, both knowing that this was just the beginning of something special. The days following the fashion show passed in a blur of text messages and late-night phone calls. Each notification from Caroline sent my heart racing, and I found myself constantly checking my phone. Our conversations flowed effortlessly, ranging from passionate discussions about fashion to silly memes that made us laugh until our sides hurt. One evening, as I was scrolling through our text history, my phone lit up with Caroline's name. "Are you free tomorrow night?" Her message read, "I'd love to take you to dinner." My fingers trembled slightly as I typed my response, trying to sound casual while my heart was doing somersaults. The next evening, I spent an embarrassingly long time getting ready, changing outfits multiple times before settling on a sleek black dress that hugged my curves just right. Caroline had chosen one of Jacksonville's most exclusive restaurants, a place overlooking the St. Johns River. As I walked in, I spotted her immediately. She was wearing a deep green silk blouse that made her eyes sparkle, and my breath caught in my throat. "You look stunning," she said softly as I approached, rising to greet me with a kiss on the cheek. Her perfume was intoxicating, a subtle blend of vanilla and something uniquely her. We were seated at a secluded table near the window, where the city lights reflected off the river's surface like scattered diamonds. The intimate setting seemed to dissolve the last of our reservations. Caroline told me about her childhood in Boston, her early dreams of being a writer, and how she fell in love with fashion journalism. I shared stories about my modeling journey, including the embarrassing mishaps that never made it to social media. Our laughter mingled with the soft classical music playing in the background. As we shared a decadent chocolate dessert, Caroline's foot brushed against mine under the table. The contact, though innocent, sent electricity through my body. Our eyes met over the rim of our wine glasses, and the intensity of her gaze made me forget to breathe for a moment. "Would you like to take a walk?" Caroline suggested after we finished our meal. The night was perfect, warm with a gentle breeze coming off the river. As we strolled along the riverfront, our hands brushed against each other several times before Caroline finally intertwined her fingers with mine. The simple gesture felt more intimate than any kiss I'd ever experienced. We stopped at a quiet spot along the riverwalk, leaning against the railing to watch the moonlight dance on the water. Caroline turned to face me, and I could see the reflection of the stars in her eyes. "Zoe," she whispered, reaching up to tuck a strand of my blonde hair behind my ear. Her touch lingered on my cheek, and I instinctively leaned into it. The moment seemed to stretch into eternity as we stood there, the space between us charged with anticipation. Then, with a gentleness that made my heart ache, Caroline leaned in and pressed her lips to mine. The kiss was soft at first, questioning, but when I responded, it deepened into something more passionate. Her hands found their way to my waist, pulling me closer, while mine tangled in her silky brown hair. When we finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, the world seemed to have shifted on its axis. Everything felt more vibrant, more alive. Caroline rested her forehead against mine, a small smile playing on her lips. "I've been wanting to do that since the moment I saw you backstage," she admitted. "Why did you wait so long?" I teased, though my voice was shaky with emotion. She laughed softly, pulling me into another brief kiss. "Some things are worth waiting for." We spent the rest of the evening walking hand in hand through the city, stealing kisses in quiet corners and making plans for future dates. When we finally said goodnight, it wasn't with the uncertainty of our first meeting, but with the promise of something beautiful beginning to bloom between us. As I lay in bed that night, my lips still tingling from her kisses, I realized that what I was feeling went far beyond simple attraction. Caroline had awakened something in me that I didn't even know was sleeping, and I couldn't wait to explore where this connection would lead us. The days following our moonlit kiss were filled with a giddy excitement I hadn't felt since my teenage years. Caroline and I continued to text and call each other daily, but there was a new undercurrent of desire in our conversations. We made plans to meet at my apartment, ostensibly to watch a movie, but we both knew there was more on the horizon. When the day finally arrived, I spent hours preparing my space, lighting scented candles and arranging fresh flowers. As I heard Caroline's knock, my heart began to race. I opened the door to find her standing there, looking breathtaking in a simple white blouse and jeans. Her eyes roamed over me appreciatively, taking in the form-fitting dress I'd chosen. "Hi," I said, suddenly feeling shy despite our previous intimacy. "Hi yourself," Caroline replied with a warm smile, stepping inside. She handed me a bottle of wine, her fingers lingering on mine as I took it. We settled on the couch, the pretense of watching a movie quickly forgotten as we became lost in conversation. As we talked, we gravitated closer to each other, the space between us charged with anticipation. Finally, during a lull in our chat, Caroline reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, her touch sending shivers down my spine. "Zoe," she murmured, her green eyes intense, "I can't stop thinking about you." Without hesitation, I leaned in and kissed her. Unlike our first kiss by the river, this one was immediately passionate. Caroline's hands tangled in my hair as she pulled me closer, and I found myself straddling her lap, the hem of my dress riding up my thighs. We broke apart, both breathing heavily. "Bedroom?" I suggested, my voice husky with desire. Caroline nodded, and I led her by the hand to my room. Once there, we took our time, savoring each moment. Caroline's fingers trailed along the zipper of my dress, slowly pulling it down. As the fabric fell away, her breath caught. "You're beautiful," she whispered, her eyes roaming over my body. I helped her out of her blouse, revealing a red, soft cotton bra underneath. My fingers trembled slightly as I reached behind her to unclasp it, letting it fall to the floor. We stood there for a moment, drinking in the sight of each other, before Caroline pulled me close, skin against skin. What followed was a dance of exploration and discovery. We took turns mapping each other's bodies with gentle caresses and tender kisses. Caroline's touch was electric, sending waves of pleasure through me with each caress. When her lips found my neck, I couldn't help but let out a soft moan. We fell onto the bed, a tangle of limbs and passion. Caroline's fingers trailed down my stomach, teasing at the waistband of my underwear before slowly sliding them off. The anticipation was almost unbearable as she kissed her way down my body. When she finally touched me where I needed her most, it was like a revelation. I arched into her, overcome with sensation. Caroline was attentive and responsive, reading my body's cues and adjusting her rhythm accordingly. As the tension built, I pulled her up for a deep, passionate kiss, wanting to be as close to her as possible when I tumbled over the edge. Afterward, as we lay tangled in the sheets, a fine sheen of sweat cooling on our skin, I felt a sense of completeness I'd never experienced before. Caroline traced lazy patterns on my arm, her touch both soothing and exhilarating. That was. I started, struggling to find the right words. Amazing, Caroline finished for me, pressing a soft kiss to my shoulder. We spent the rest of the night alternating between passionate lovemaking and intimate conversations. As the first light of dawn began to filter through my curtains, we finally drifted off to sleep, wrapped in each other's arms. When I woke a few hours later, it was to find Caroline watching me, a soft smile on her face. "Good morning, beautiful," she said, leaning in for a gentle kiss. As we lay there, the morning sun warming our skin, we talked about what this meant for us. It was clear that what we had was more than just a casual fling. We decided to commit to exploring this relationship, to see where it might lead us. "I know it's fast," Caroline said, her fingers intertwined with mine, "but I've never felt this way about anyone before." I squeezed her hand, my heart full. "I feel the same way," I replied. "I want to see where this goes." As we got up to face the day, there was a new lightness in my step. The world seemed brighter, full of possibilities. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew that with Caroline by my side, I was ready to face them. The weeks following our first night together were a blissful whirlwind. Caroline and I fell into a comfortable rhythm, balancing our busy careers with our budding relationship. We'd steal moments together whenever we could. Quick lunches between my photo shoots and her editorial meetings, cozy nights in my apartment, and glamorous fashion events, where we'd exchange secret glances across crowded rooms. One balmy Jacksonville evening, we decided to try out a new restaurant that had opened downtown. The night was perfect, warm with a gentle breeze that carried the scent of blooming jasmine. We walked hand in hand, laughing and talking about our day. Caroline looked stunning in a sleek black dress, her green eyes sparkling as she recounted a funny incident from her office. As we rounded a corner into a quieter street, the atmosphere suddenly shifted. A figure emerged from the shadows, face obscured by a dark hood. Before I could react, I felt the cold press of metal against my back. "Don't move," a gruff voice commanded. "Hand over your purses and jewelry, now." Time seemed to slow down. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears, feel Caroline's hand tighten around mine. We exchanged a terrified glance, both of us frozen in shock. "I said now." The assailant's voice rose, tinged with desperation. With trembling hands, I slowly reached for my purse. Caroline did the same, her movements careful and measured. As we handed over our belongings, I caught a glimpse of our attacker's eyes. They were wild, darting back and forth nervously. "The necklace, too," he demanded, gesturing at the delicate gold chain around Caroline's neck. A gift I'd given her just last week. I felt a surge of anger cut through my fear. That necklace meant something to us, but as Caroline's fingers moved to unclasp it, I caught her eye. The message was clear. No piece of jewelry was worth our safety. As quickly as it had begun, it was over. The robber snatched our things and disappeared into the night, leaving us standing there, shaken and disoriented. For a moment, we stood in stunned silence. Then, as the reality of what had just happened sank in, Caroline pulled me into a tight embrace. I could feel her heart racing against my chest, matching the frantic rhythm of my own. "Are you okay?" she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. I nodded against her shoulder, unable to form words just yet. We clung to each other, finding comfort in the solid presence of each other's bodies. Eventually, we made our way to a nearby cafe to call the police. As we gave our statements, the adrenaline began to wear off, leaving us both drained and jittery. The officers were kind but not optimistic about recovering our stolen items. We nodded numbly, too exhausted to feel much beyond relief that we were unharmed. That night, neither of us wanted to be alone. We went back to my place, where we curled up together on the couch, a blanket wrapped around our shoulders. Sleep eluded us, so we talked in low voices about what had happened, processing the fear and anger that coursed through us. I was so scared, Caroline admitted, her fingers intertwined with mine. Not for the things we lost, but for you. When I saw that knife, I squeezed her hand, understanding completely. I know. I felt the same way. All I could think about was keeping you safe. As the first light of dawn began to filter through the windows, we finally drifted off into a fitful sleep, still holding on to each other. The days that followed were challenging. We both jumped at sudden noises, felt uneasy walking alone at night. But we found strength in each other, supporting one another through the emotional aftermath of the robbery. We attended a support group for victims of crime, where we met others who had gone through similar experiences. Sharing our story and hearing others helped us process our feelings and begin to heal. Caroline suggested we take self-defense classes together. Twice a week, we'd meet at a local dojo, learning techniques to protect ourselves and each other. The physical activity was cathartic, helping us channel our fear and anger into something productive. Slowly but surely, we began to reclaim our sense of security. We started going out again, refusing to let fear dictate our lives. But there was a new awareness in us, a heightened sense of our surroundings, and a deeper appreciation for each moment we had together. One evening, about a month after the incident, we decided to revisit the restaurant we'd been heading to that fateful night. As we walked down the street, I felt Caroline tense beside me. I knew she was remembering, just as I was. I stopped, turning to face her. "Hey," I said softly, cupping her face in my hands. "We're okay. We're here together and we're stronger than ever." Caroline's eyes met mine, a mix of emotions swirling in their green depths. Then, slowly, she smiled. "You're right," she said, leaning in to kiss me softly. "We are stronger." As we continued our walk, hand in hand, I realized that while the robbery had been a terrifying experience, it had also brought us closer together. We had faced our fears, supported each other through the darkness, and come out the other side with a deeper understanding of our resilience, both as individuals and as a couple. The incident had shown us the fragility of life, but also the strength of our bond. And as we stepped into the warmly lit restaurant, ready to create new, happier memories, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, Caroline and I would face them together. Life has a funny way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. Just as Caroline and I were settling into a comfortable rhythm, savoring our newfound strength after the robbery incident, fate decided to test us once more. It started with a phone call. I was lounging on Caroline's couch, flipping through a fashion magazine while she prepared dinner in the kitchen. The smell of garlic and herbs filled the air, mingling with the soft jazz playing in the background. It was a perfect, ordinary evening, until my phone buzzed. The caller ID showed my agent's number. Curious, I answered, and in that moment, everything changed. "Zoe, darling," my agent's voice chirped through the speaker. "I've got incredible news. Vogue wants you for their next cover shoot." My heart skipped a beat. A Vogue cover had been my dream since I first stepped onto a runway. It was the kind of opportunity that could launch a model into superstardom. That's amazing," I managed to stammer out. "There's just one catch," my agent continued. "The shoot's in New York. They need you there for at least 3 months. The excitement in my chest suddenly turned to lead. 3 months, in New York, away from Jacksonville, away from Caroline. I glanced towards the kitchen, where Caroline was humming along to the music, blissfully unaware of the bombshell that had just been dropped into our lives. How could I tell her? That night, as we lay in bed, I broke the news. Caroline's initial reaction was one of pure joy for me. She pulled me into a tight hug, peppering my face with kisses. "Zoe, this is incredible. I'm so proud of you," she exclaimed. But as the reality of the situation sank in, I saw the light in her eyes dim slightly. 3 months was a long time to be apart, especially for a relationship as new as ours. "We'll make it work," Caroline said, her voice filled with determination. "We can do video calls and I'll come visit when I can." I nodded, trying to match her optimism. But as I drifted off to sleep that night, A knot of anxiety formed in my stomach. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of preparations. Between packing, arranging for my apartment to be sublet, and trying to spend as much time with Caroline as possible, I barely had a moment to breathe. Before I knew it, I was standing at the airport, Caroline's arms wrapped tightly around me. "I'm going to miss you so much," I whispered into her hair. "I'll miss you too," she replied, her voice thick with emotion. "But this is your dream, Zoe. Go show New York what you're made of." With one last lingering kiss, I boarded the plane, my heart heavy but full of hope. The first few weeks in New York were exhilarating. The Vogue team was incredible to work with, and I threw myself into the shoot with everything I had. Caroline and I video called every night, sharing the details of our days and falling asleep with our phones propped up next to us. But as time wore on, the distance began to take its toll. Our schedules often conflicted. With my long shooting days and Caroline's deadlines at the magazine, our nightly calls became less frequent, replaced by hurried text messages and voicemails. One particularly grueling day on set, I missed 3 calls from Caroline. By the time I got back to my temporary apartment, it was past midnight in Jacksonville. I called anyway, hoping she might still be awake. "Hello?" Caroline's voice was groggy with sleep. "Hey, it's me. I'm so sorry I missed your calls. The shoot ran late and—" "It's fine, Zoe," she cut me off, her tone clipped. "I understand you're busy." The conversation that followed was stilted and uncomfortable, nothing like our usual easy banter. As we said goodnight, I felt a growing distance between us that had nothing to do with physical miles. The next few weeks were a struggle. Our communication became sporadic and tense. Misunderstandings cropped up over the smallest things, a missed call here, a forgotten text there. The stress of my work and the constant homesickness didn't help matters. One night, after a particularly frustrating day, I broke down during our video call. "I don't know if I can do this anymore, Caroline," I sobbed. "I miss you so much it hurts." Caroline's face softened, her own eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I miss you too, Zoe, more than I can say. But we can't give up. What we have is worth fighting for." Her words were like a lifeline, pulling me back from the brink of despair. We spent the next hour talking, really talking, for the first time in weeks. We acknowledged the strain the distance had put on our relationship and made a commitment to work harder at staying connected. As the end of my 3-month stint approached, I felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. I was eager to return to Jacksonville, to feel Caroline's arms around me again. But I also worried about how our relationship might have changed during our time apart. Then, 2 days before I was set to fly home, I received another call from my agent. Vogue wanted to extend the contract for another month. It was an incredible opportunity, one that could cement my place in the fashion world. But as I stood there, phone in hand, all I could think about was Caroline. About the warmth of her smile, the sound of her laugh, the feel of her hand in mine. I thought about the life we were building together in Jacksonville, the dreams we shared. In that moment, I made a decision that would change the course of my life. I turned down the extension. As I boarded the plane back to Jacksonville, my heart raced with anticipation. Caroline was waiting for me at the airport, and the moment I saw her, all my doubts melted away. We ran towards each other, colliding in a fierce embrace that said more than words ever could. "I missed you so much," Caroline whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "I missed you too," I replied, pulling back to look into her eyes. "I'm home now, for good." As we left the airport hand in hand, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. The distance had tested us, but it had also shown us the strength of our bond. And I was ready for whatever came next, as long as I had Caroline by my side. The months following my return from New York were a whirlwind of emotions and adjustments. Caroline and I threw ourselves into rebuilding our relationship, cherishing every moment we had together. The time apart had taught us valuable lessons about communication and commitment, and we were determined to apply them. As spring bloomed in Jacksonville, so did our love. We spent weekends exploring hidden corners of the city, finding new favorite spots and rediscovering old ones. Our evenings were filled with quiet moments at home, cooking dinner together or curling up on the couch with a good book. The simple act of being in each other's presence felt like a luxury after our time apart. One balmy evening, as we strolled along the riverfront, Caroline surprised me with a suggestion. "What do you think about moving in together?" she asked, her voice a mix of excitement and nervousness. I stopped in my tracks, turning to face her. "Really? You want to live together?" Caroline nodded, a soft smile playing on her lips. "I do. These past few months have shown me that I want to build a life with you, Zoe. Every day, not just on weekends or between work commitments." My heart swelled with joy. "Yes," I said, pulling her close. 1,000 times yes. The process of combining our lives under one roof was both exhilarating and challenging. We spent weeks debating over which apartment to keep, how to merge our belongings, and whose taste in decor would prevail. But even in the midst of disagreements over paint colors or furniture arrangement, there was an underlying current of excitement. We were creating a home together, a physical manifestation of our commitment to each other. As we settled into our shared space, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought us to this point. From that first chance meeting at the charity gala to the trials of long distance and the joy of reunion, every step had led us here. Our relationship had been tested, but it had emerged stronger for it. One lazy Sunday morning, as we lounged in bed, sunlight streaming through the curtains, Caroline propped herself up on one elbow and gazed at me intently. "What?" I asked, feeling suddenly self-conscious under her scrutiny. "I was just thinking," she said, her fingers tracing patterns on my arm, "about how lucky I am to have you in my life, how grateful I am that we found each other." I felt a lump form in my throat, overwhelmed by the depth of emotion in her words. "I feel the same way," I whispered, pulling her close for a tender kiss. As the days turned into weeks and months, we fell into a comfortable rhythm of shared life. Our careers continued to flourish, my modeling work picking up after the Vogue shoot, and Caroline's magazine going from strength to strength. But now, at the end of each day, we had each other to come home to. We weren't without our challenges, of course. There were arguments over household chores, moments of frustration when work stress spilled over into our personal lives, and the occasional bout of insecurity as we navigated the complexities of a long-term relationship. But we faced each hurdle together, our bond growing stronger with each obstacle overcome. As our first anniversary of living together approached, I found myself thinking more and more about the future. What did I want for us? Where did I see our relationship going? One evening, as we sat on our balcony watching the sunset over the river, I turned to Caroline. "Do you ever think about marriage?" I asked, my heart racing with nervous anticipation. Caroline's eyes widened slightly, then softened. "I do," she admitted, "more often than I'd like to admit." We fell into a conversation about our hopes and dreams, our fears and uncertainties. We talked about the possibility of children, of building a family together. We discussed our careers and how they might evolve over time. As the sky darkened and stars began to twinkle overhead, we painted a picture of a shared future, full of love and possibility. Nothing was decided that night. We didn't make any grand declarations or set any definitive plans. But as we went to bed, there was a new sense of purpose between us, a shared understanding of where we wanted our journey to lead. In the weeks that followed, I found myself paying more attention to jewelry store windows, imagining what kind of ring Caroline might like. I caught her lingering over wedding magazines at the grocery store checkout. We were both thinking about it, dreaming about it, but neither of us was quite ready to take that final step. And that was okay. We had time. Our love wasn't a race to be won, or a destination to be reached. It was a journey, one we were taking together, step by step. As I write this, sitting in our shared home with Caroline working quietly beside me, I'm filled with a sense of contentment and anticipation. I don't know exactly what the future holds for us. Will there be a proposal soon? A wedding? Children? Only time will tell. But what I do know is this: whatever comes next, we'll face it together. Our love story isn't over. In many ways, it feels like it's just beginning. There are still chapters to be written, adventures to be had, challenges to overcome. And as I look at Caroline, catching her eye and sharing a smile, I know that there's no one else I'd rather write those chapters